of shows. Available every.
Hello everyone and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, and for our fourth segment of today's show, we transition from the SEC to the ACC in terms of looking at returning quarterback talent and which situations will be the best in that conference. The ACC, in my humble opinion, one of the most underrated conferences in the entire country when it comes to quarterback talent, and I really wanted to share this with you because all of these guys on this list can make a huge difference for their teams, whether they be transfers, whether they be returners, whether they have a chip on their shoulder, whether they're back with a vengeance. All of these guys have a point to prove, and they're really exciting talent. So without further ado, let's talk about these situations in the ACC, starting off with perhaps the best returning quarterback in the entire conference, in Cade Klubnik of Clemson. Obviously had a rough start to his Clemson career, replacing DJ Uiagalelei and his really weird start to his career. Hopefully DJ Uiagalelei finds his footing somewhere, maybe outside of the country, but I'm not sure what happened with him. But I digress, because we're talking about Cade Klubnik, someone who really matured in his second season as the starter, returns for his senior season as aptly as anyone under Dabo Swinney could. 3,639 yards though last year, 30 touchdowns, 16 more than the year prior. Third straight season under Garrett Riley, most importantly, their offensive coordinator, and 11 games and multiple touchdowns. And I do think that the promise he showed in fighting against Texas, leading his team to the brink of potential upset, really showed the moxie this kid has, really showed the improvement and maturity and understanding between himself and Garrett Riley, really leading him as the OC. Most importantly, what I love about him is he's a senior quarterback. And it really goes to show that you don't necessarily have to be a one-and-done guy. You don't have to be someone like an Archer Manning who waits their turn, plays one season, and then leaves. You can be a guy like Cade Klubnik who is willing to improve. And that's something that I like about Dabo Swinney. Love him or hate him, he relies upon certain guys who are willing to learn under his tutelage. And he did a great job in hiring Garrett Riley, really rejuvenating a guy like Cade Klubnik, and I'm really intrigued to see how he improves. He could be, in my opinion, one of the top QBs taken in the 26 NFL draft, but ultimately I applaud him for returning because it takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of guts to return to a team as a senior when you could have gone in this year's draft, could have been potentially one of the top 5 QBs taken, and really want to learn more, really want to improve, really wants to build on a very strong season for Clemson and for himself. And that's why I think he leads the way in terms of returning quarterback talent for the ACC in terms of how good this conference could look at the position. Now let's talk about an interesting returnee over at Georgia Tech, Mr. Haynes King. What a weird college career he has had. I don't know what that was. But ultimately, talking about Haynes King is an interesting topic because of, like I said, his many trials and tribulations as a college football quarterback. Started out his career at Texas A&M. Obviously had quote-unquote Alabama boost over there, where every random Texas A&M QB over the past 5 years in the Jimbo Fisher era plays well against Alabama. That was mainly how a lot of people may have heard of him over the years, but now at Georgia Tech has gone kind of under the radar for his dual threat ability in terms of leading the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to kind of the mid-tier of the ACC. A lot of people did not think this Georgia Tech team would be good at all, but they upset the odds in Ireland against Florida State, even though Florida State turned out to be a pretty bad team. Nearly upset the Georgia this year in a classic game that went 8 overtimes and really proved the dual threat abilities of Haynes King, and that's what I love about him. I love me a dual threat QB in the mold of, say, like a Riley Leonard, who just goes at opposing defenses with aplomb, not afraid to risk his body. And I like the backup situation as well with Aaron Philo as well. Not necessarily as well built as Haynes King, but still a very nice backup dual threat quarterback. So ultimately, Georgia Tech could be a dark horse this year in the ACC because of Haynes King's return. It's not necessarily the best in terms of arm strength or accuracy, but he gets the job done, I'll say, about Mr. Haynes King. I feel like going into his third season in the system, he is someone who I feel like really has a chance to prove that the start of his career will not be like the end of his career. He has truly proven he can redeem himself. The past 2 seasons, he's thrown for 41 touchdowns. So, as you can see, steady improvements for him. And this could be a breakout year where ultimately an NFL team might really like him because of what he's able to do this year and take a chance on him. And in a very deep field, that's all you really want if you're a quarterback like Haynes King, to be noticed for your abilities. And I think he has a great chance to do so in this very crowded ACC. So I do think that a lot of people might still underappreciate Georgia Tech this year just because of how top-heavy the ACC could be. But I'm not underrating Haynes King and what he can do and how he can improve, most importantly. That's why he sits here on this list. But let's talk now about the most interesting situation. Another transfer QB coming in from Miami after a lot of people thought he would declare for the draft. Could have been perhaps the number 1 QB taken in the draft, but after a pretty bad season, not necessarily the season you would expect out of him, transfers to Miami with a new start. Carson Beck. Now, he did forego the NFL draft after a lot of people potentially saw him as someone a lot of NFL teams would be interested in. And I think it was ultimately the right choice for him. I don't necessarily think he was pro-ready after a lot of people put the pressure on him to be the number 1 QB in this class. A lot of preseason hype surrounding him. But I do think that transferring to Miami is a good move for Carson Beck. Obviously, they're going to lose a lot of receiving talent, but they're also going to gain some as well. A lot of Georgia guys might follow him a little further south to reunite with him, and this could be an offense in the ACC predicated on Carson Beck's stability and his ability to spread the football around. That's what I really appreciate about a guy like Carson Beck. While he had his struggles this season, certainly tossed his fair share of interceptions, I do think that his ability in all the areas of the field to spread the football around, distribute the wealth, is not going to go unnoticed in Miami. He could improve his draft stock, like I said, in a very deep 2026 QB class to the point where he himself could be the number 1 QB yet again, where a lot of people are going to be saying, hey, Carson Beck forgo the draft this year, but this time around he's not going to make the same mistake. And now in this Miami system where he could look a little bit more comfortable, not necessarily be too overhyped, I feel like he could potentially be the number 1 QB on our big boards yet again. So that's why I think that Carson Beck's an interesting proposition for Miami. But then again, there are still worries, there are still caveats coming with him. He obviously had the elbow surgery after that injury in the SEC championship game, so that's something that you're going to have to monitor if you're Miami. And also, I feel like when players do this, it is going to mean that not only do they feel like they could be in a better, more advantageous position next year in the NFL draft positioning, they have to prove it. Because I feel like if Carson Beck goes into this season, this is a hypothetical, and does not perform up to Miami's standards and looks worse than, say, Cam Ward, who a lot of people think is going to be the number 1 QB off the board in this year's draft, then they're going to doubt Carson Beck even more. They're going to be like, well, Cam Ward came in as a transfer and immediately rejuvenated this offense, rejuvenated this program. So why can't Carson Beck do the same? So he's really making a statement of intent saying that I can be better than what I was this season in Georgia and really prove that I too after transferring can rejuvenate my college football career, make people think better of me, and have a better chance of being drafted. So I admire his situation, I admire this decision, but it's going to be a risk because he's going to have to prove it. But ultimately, Miami goes into the season with a lot less questions at the QB position than you would think. And then last but not least, SMU's Kevin Jennings. I like this because not only does Kevin Jennings return, but former 5-star recruit and the guy he usurped for the starting role, Preston Stone, returns as well. But I really think that Kevin Jennings is a guy who a lot of people are going to be hyped to see in year 2 leading this offense. His third-team all-league performance cannot go understated. 3,245 yards, 23 touchdowns, 354 rushing yards, and 5 scores. And I think that Kevin Jennings is someone like a dual threat guy in the SEC. And I like that flair in the ACC because it might be what's needed to carry you over the hump in the ACC championship game this year. I mean, this year obviously was a year ahead potentially for SMU, but they're a team that's playing with house money. Literally, they have all the booster money they need, and this program could be good for many years, and Kevin Jennings could be the start of something big down there at Southern Methodist University. So I really like that he returns and really wants to be part of this SMU rebuild, or whatever you might call it, considering the fact that they're not really rebuilding. They're almost ready. So I really like that decision by him. But let me know what you think about the QB situation. The ACC is going to be a loaded, top-heavy conference. But coming up next, we transition across the pond, specifically to Germany. We talk about a Bundesliga showdown between RB Leipzig and Bayer Leverkusen, 2 teams in the top 5. Bayer Leverkusen looking to put pressure on Bayern Munich. RB Leipzig looking to stay alive in the race for a Champions League spot. We'll be right back to talk about it after this short break.